big week at the Supreme Court, and of course, he is my personal legal analyst.
Yes.
Ian Millhiser of the Center for American Progress.
Author of Injustices.
Yes. Good morning, Ian.
Good boy, I'm really not that big a name, though.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are.
You are
to
my
us,
big
you
name.
are.
You are the dude. You're the legal dude. Well, Ian, first of all, let's start with the biggie, because obviously marriage equality, what everybody's talking about. I had an attorney friend of mine that was in the courtroom, talk to us a couple days ago. She tried to still my troubled heart because obviously a lot of us, when you hear some of these comments, even from Kennedy, you're like, wait a minute, is this not a slam dunk as much as legal experts think? What is first of all, what's your overall take?
So my overall take, I think the good guys are probably going to win. I think it's going to be 5-4.
Yeah.
Kennedy did make some comments early on where, he had this one line where he said, well, for millennia, we didn't have marriage equality, and so he seemed to think that means that we shouldn't have it now. But later on, he really seemed annoyed at the arguments that the anti-gay attorney was making. I mean, this lawyer's argument, it's hard to get your head around it. It's that society should be able to send a message that marriage is about providing a stable home for children, but gay people can't breed. And if we let people who can't breed marry, then somehow that says that marriage isn't about kids, and that would cause more children to be born out of wedlock. That was his argument. Try to get your head around that. And Kennedy was really angry because he felt like it seemed to be suggesting that gay people can't be good parents, and that's not true. And Kennedy made clear that he felt that was not true. At one point, the lawyer said that, marriage has nothing to do with providing dignity to the couples who are in it. And Kennedy was pretty outraged at that statement. He said, I thought that was the whole purpose of marriage.
Yeah.
So, on balance, I came into it very comfortable that we were going to have Kennedy's votes. I left, slightly less comfortable, but still pretty confident.
Well, the one thing the one thing I think that threw us off is when he said, who are we to decide? I was like, huh?
Or was he just making the devil's advocate argument there?
Yeah, the rule of thumb I use for Kennedy, because most oral arguments, he tries to ask something of both sides, but I only look for where he has some real emotion in his voice. And the part where he seemed to actually be upset with the arguments that were being made was when the lawyer who was arguing in favor of marriage discrimination was making the silly argument. And that's where Kennedy, he wasn't just sort of intellectually reciting a concern that he might have. He really seemed agitated by the argument that the lawyer was making.
First of all, I thought Ruth Bader Ginsburg pretty much eviscerated that argument about the whole millennia thing. She was talking about, women used to essentially be chattel in a marriage. Of course, we've redefined the institution, right?
Yeah, no, Ginsburg, it was a fantastic point that she made. For the longest time in this country, for many, many years, women couldn't own property.
Right.
It wasn't until the 1970s that there was a successful prosecution for marital rape. So that meant for most of our nation's history, married women didn't even have the right to refuse sex to their husband. When you conceive of marriage as something that exists in terms of gender roles, where you have a dominant man and a subservient woman, and that's the nature of what marriage is, then of course you don't have same-sex marriage, because if you think of it in terms of gender roles, you need to have both roles. But once you eliminate that sexist way of looking at marriage, all of a sudden there's no longer a rationale for excluding gay couples, because you no longer think of this thing as something that's inherently tied up in the fact that men and women are different.
Right. Ian, what do you think this ridiculous letter from all these religious leaders warning the Supreme Court is going to have any effect on them? It was, who was it, Franklin Graham and all these, religious leaders wrote a letter essentially saying we won't obey.
Was it an amicus brief, or was it just a letter?
Strongly worded letter.
Yeah. Yeah, there's letters. That argument came up in amicus briefs as well. That goes back. There was the Manhattan Declaration in 2009 where all these religious leaders threatened civil obedience if, God forbid, we got equality in this country.
Right.
It's an old argument, and Scalia and Alito picked it up. But I mean, I don't think that's ultimately going to sway Kennedy in this case. I think where it becomes a problem is in the next case, because we don't know yet what the court's going to do about the cake baker who says that they won't bake a cake for someone if they're gay.
Right.
Or, to take a more serious example, we don't know what's going to happen to the employer who says, yes, I give health benefits to all my employees and their spouses, but I object to this person's spouse, so I'm not going to give this person's spouse the health benefits that they need to pay for their health care.
Right.
So, I mean, this is going to be a serious problem, but I don't think it's going to be a serious problem in this case. I think, there's going to be a bunch of follow-up lawsuits, presuming that we win on marriage equality, where essentially people with religious objections to gay people try to exempt themselves from the law that requires them to treat gay people as if they're human beings.
Mm-hmm. Where does, because I know you had written previously about John Roberts, that it wasn't impossible that he could be in play, but it sounds like it does not seem like you think so if it's going to be 5-4, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very unlikely that. I mean, Roberts did ask one question where he seemed to think that, maybe this is gender discrimination.
Yeah, sex discrimination. That was interesting.
Yeah, unexpected.
I mean, it's an interesting argument. I mean, the argument was things like, well, John loves Sue, but Tom also loves John, and
Sue's
John's
pissed.
allowed to marry Sue, but he's not. But Tom's not allowed to marry John, and that's a form of sex discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think. I mean, I don't think we're going to get him, partially because of what he said in his past opinion, but also, Chief Justice Roberts, his family is very devoutly Catholic, so much so that they wouldn't even have, they have he and his wife have 2 adopted children. The reason why they adopted is because for religious reasons, they object to fertility treatment. And it just strikes me as unlikely that someone who is so caught up in a culturally conservative environment where even fertility treatments are forbidden, that
Right.
they're going to turn around and say, but, I'm going to vote the right way on marriage equality.
Right. Ian, I could always talk to you all day, and now we're running short of time, and it was a big week. Let's talk about what else was notable, whether it's lethal injection or, I think there was a sliver of hope on campaign finance. Tell us, if you can tell us briefly what else the other, notable things were this week.
Yeah, I mean, there was a small sliver of hope. So Florida has a rule that if you're a judge, you're not allowed, if you're an elected judge, you're not allowed to go out and solicit funds for your campaign. You have to get someone else to do it for you.
Okay.
And the reason for this is we don't want judges soliciting funds from the lawyers who practice in front of them.
Right.
And Roberts crossed over in a 5-4 case and said that Florida rule was okay. So that's nice.
Huh.
What's not so nice is the way that he wrote his opinion is he said that, judges aren't like legislators. Judges aren't supposed to pay favors to their campaign donors. They're not supposed to only do things for their supporters. And I'm reading this opinion, I'm like, wait a second. Members of Congress aren't supposed to do that either. He's in the process of upholding this law, he seemed to be endorsing the notion that, go out and buy a congressman.
Yeah, exactly. And Ian, quickly, what lethal injection? What was besides how gruesome the arguments were? What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I mean, this was a really gruesome argument. I'm not optimistic about it. The question is whether inmates can be executed in a way that may cause them to feel a tremendous amount of pain. And the sense I got from the conservative justice, and I think it's going to be all 5 of them who join it, was that they felt that, it's just so important that when someone is convicted of a death penalty offense that they get killed, that we're not going to bother ourselves with these little niceties.
Details,
like whether
right.
they'll be tortured to death.